Hi and welcome back to your mat. My name is Anna, the whollyogi, and today I'm bringing you a restorative class that is using all the props and the wall. So what you'll need is a mat or a cushioned surface. You could even just be right on the carpet leading up to an open space on the wall. I have a number of props out here. You can have all of them or some of them. We might not use all of them, but we have 2 blocks. We have a sandbag, a blanket, and a bolster. A bolster, a big couch cushion or pillow is a great substitute for that. Blankets, you can use any type of blanket. Blocks, books, tissue boxes, cans, whatever you need to be able to bring that floor a little closer to you. So today we're going to begin where we would normally end in a restorative class. We're going to begin with the legs up the wall. There's going to be a lot of stillness in this class. We won't be moving a lot. We'll do maybe 4 or 5 different poses, holding here and there. So make sure to quiet your mind. Whatever distractions are around you, try to shut them off. TV, go into a room with yourself, whatever you can to put yourself in this moment completely. You'll benefit more from it. So what we're going to do to get started is we're going to bring these hips up close to the wall, and then we're going to pivot those legs up the wall. Now you can always reach for that blanket and pillow the head if that's comfortable. We're starting here with a little bit of lymph drainage. Legs, ankles stacked above hips. So those hands can rest on the tummy or they can rest out by the sides, palms face up. And I want you to just breathe here. If you have a sandbag, there is the option to bring that to your low tummy to anchor that pelvis and tailbone down to the floor. These first few moments as we rest in our first pose, we're connecting our body, our breath, and our mind, what we might call our intention. I want you to think about what it is that brought you to your mat, what it is that inspired you to click on this video. Let this be your intention. As we hold these poses, the mind will likely be the most challenging piece for you, keeping it here and centered on the present moment. I invite you to find a way of focusing here, whether it's focusing on the space between the inhale and the exhale. Maybe it's counting your breath, maybe it's holding a mantra with you as you rest in these poses. One of my favorites being, "This feels so good." Strengthen that pathway of keeping yourself present instead of letting that mind wander off. Beautiful. Keep breathing, keep settling. Keep feeling the body, the breath, and the mind resting here together in synchrony, in synchronized energy. We have just a few breaths left here in this pose with walls, with legs up the wall. And we acknowledge how the body, the mind, and the breath are feeling after taking this time in this pose. We'll gently take this sandbag off of the tummy if it's there, bringing it off to the side. And from there, simply bend those knees, bringing feet to the wall to begin here. You might feel this stretch in the hips, the glutes, the hamstrings, depending on how tight you are, just with the feet flat against the wall and knees pulling down towards the armpits. So we're really pulling those knees in with the feet flat on the wall. Now you can stay here if this feels really nice in those hips. Feel free to use this option. It's a bit more restorative than coming into what we're going to come into next, which is our happy baby. So we're going to take the hands to the outsides of the feet, but with the elbows inside the knees, and take those heels to stack over the knees. So you'll notice that transitioning from feet to the wall to feet to the sky, this brings in a little bit more sensation for those hips and that low back. You want to try to keep pulling that low back to the floor. Elbows and knees are pulling down towards the floor. And it might be tempting to find constant movement here, rocking, whatever it is, but I want you to try to challenge yourself to come to stillness in this pose. If you can, relax the neck and shoulders if there's tension creeping up there. Relax the face and jaw and begin to lean into that strategy of keeping your mind present, whether that was counting your breath, focusing on the space between the inhale and the exhale, or using that mantra. You can close off the mouth and just breathe through the nose. tends to be true that the moment you want to leave is the moment you should stay for even just 3 to 5 breaths more to help push through that wall, that barrier, find more space to move into with your body and your breath. Beautiful. Take just a few more breaths here, releasing as much tension as you can, despite the sensation you might be finding as we hold here. And then gently start to bring these heels in and release those hands from the feet. Take a moment here before we come out of this position against the wall. I want you to just give yourself a moment to find equilibrium in the body. When you're ready, you can gently tip over to the right side and press yourself up. Our next position we'll hold is a deer, working into the glute and outer hip. You might want this blanket off to the left side for this next pose. As we bring the right shin parallel to the top edge of the mat and the left shin parallel to the left edge of the mat. So our legs are at 90 degrees all the way around. Now you have the option of using a block in front of you or the bolster. We have lots of props, so feel free to use what works for you. What you're going to do here is frame this right leg with the shoulders and the hips, and then grow tall before folding forward onto your forearms. Or you can relax all the way down to the floor with no props if you have that space in the right glute and hip. Good, so we're pulling chest and gaze forward, working into the right glute. At any point you feel like as you breathe, you can move further into it. Feel free to do so. You can even bring that forehead down, releasing as much as you can. from where you are in your deer pose. Just take a couple more deep breaths. And then start to walk your shoulders all the way up over the hips, coming out. And we'll take those hands behind the hips, gently swaying these knees left and right. Heels can stay down, but knees move back and forth to get this release in the hips. Good. The next time you come forward, we're going to switch and come into deer on the other side. I'll turn towards you, but feel free to stay facing the top of your mat. So I'm bringing that left shin as if it's parallel to the top edge of the mat, bringing my right knee out to the side, 90 degrees at all angles again. And get nice and tall in the crown of the head and fold over that left leg. You'll notice that there might be one side that's more tense than the other, and that's okay. It's simply noticing. Again, feel free to move into this as you breathe. Maybe you feel like you can relax deeper over this left leg the longer you hold. Keep breathing to release this tension in the left glute and hip. And after these next few breaths, we'll start to rise up, bringing shoulders over hips. And coming out of our deer on this side. Heels stay rooted, hands come behind the hips. Let's sway these knees left and right again, finding a release. And then let's come into our next pose. So this next pose, you you might want a blanket or some extra cushioning right by the wall for you. And you'll probably want your blocks here to help bring the floor a little closer to you. We're going to come into the quad and hip flexor of this left leg to begin. So we're going to bring this right foot forward and inch this left knee back towards the wall. This is kind of an awkward thing to come into, so take your time. Essentially, you want that left knee to draw all the way back until it hits the wall, and then that left foot is stacked right over the left knee. Now, you'll notice my hips are really diving forward, shoulders are diving forward with the blocks. This is already pretty intense in my quad and hip flexor. The ultimate goal is to bring these blocks back and to bring that back body all the way flat to the wall behind you. Now, if you're really tight in your left quad or hip flexor, that might not happen. Maybe you don't even need these blocks, you can rise up without them. But find that level of comfort for a hold for a few minutes on this left side. I'm a little bit tight here, so I'm going to come forward a little bit and allow myself to be less intense of a stretch here. A little bit more on the restorative side. But feel free to take the variation that works best for you. You'll know it when you feel it. And if you bend your hips like this to send your hips back to the wall, you won't feel this quad and hip flexor stretch. So you want to keep those hips moving forward. Even if you're upright, those hips are really pushing forward to find this quad and hip flexor stretch. Make sure you're breathing, especially in a pose like this where it tends to be very loud in the parts of the stretch that we're holding and feeling. Make sure to breathe so that you don't lose too much of that calm. This stretch, just like the others that we've taken, you might notice that the longer you hold, there's space that you can move into. Feel free to allow your breath to guide you into that. And take a few more breaths here. And the safest way to come out is to press those hands into the blocks, press that right heel into the floor, and bend forward at the waist. Good. So we're going to transition to the other side in this stretch. You can maybe just bring this right knee straight back and bring the left knee forward, or you can bring both legs out and reset entirely. Take take the transition that works best in your body. So again, we're gonna find what works. Now, this is very, very tight in my right quad and right hip flexor. I feel an arching in my back, standing straight up. So I'm gonna take a more gentle version tonight with hands on the blocks and letting my hips melt down, getting into that quad and hip flexor. Keeping the breath, the mind, the body steady and connected in poses that are this loud is especially important so that we don't misconstrue the state of our body. We don't want our body to think it isn't safe. We need to communicate safety by staying steady in our breath and our being, and then our body is more likely to work with us and opening up in these stretches. So really try to release as much as you can despite the tension that's coming up. We're here for just a few more breaths. And safely begin to press into that left heel, pull the hips back, and release that tension. We'll just gently come out of that pose, bringing both knees down, tuck those toes under, hips back to the heels, just opening up those feet for a moment here. Before we come into our last pose before Shavasana. Those toes tucked under, hips on the heels, shoulders stacked over hips to open out those feet. bring the hips over the heels. Now here we're going to stand up and bring this blanket to cross across our waist. The blanket will be just below the belly button by a couple inches, right along the hip flexors. We're going to bend those knees, feet hip width distance, and connect the tummy to the thighs, squeezing that blanket between the two surfaces. From there, head, neck, shoulders are hanging. Arms can ragdoll by the sides, or if you'd like, you can clasp hands behind the head and create a little bit of gravity for the back of the skull. You could also take opposite elbows, but remember we're here for a little bit. So we want whatever we take to be very sustainable. Hands underneath the feet can also be an option here. For the release in the neck, the back body. Keep breathing. And here, just take a few more breaths. Completely surrendering to gravity. You can gently release those hands from the feet if they're underneath. Release the hands from the back of the head, or release the hands from opposite elbows. And we'll gently bring these hips down towards the floor, coming onto our mat. From here, we'll move into our final resting pose, Shavasana. So we have a couple options. You could bring the bolster underneath the knees, like so, and come to lay down. You could also leave that bolster out and just come down onto your back. You could also take this blanket and pillow the head behind you. And then finally, the option of bringing that sandbag to the tummy is there, if you have one. So you can bring this, place it on that low tummy, maybe even more on the pelvis, feeling that connection between earth and body. Those hands can be by the sides, palms face up. Coming into our final resting pose, honoring what your body wants right now, not taking what you feel you should take, but taking what your body wants. Feel this practice we've taken downloading into the body. Benefits. the space we found, that we moved into. And I invite you to stay here as long as you would like. If you have more time, stay. If you don't, take a few breaths, giving yourself a bit of gratitude for coming to your mat, for practicing this peace for yourself. You've decided to stay. Stay here. You've decided that you need to keep moving on with your day. You can simply move those props off to the side and come up to a seat and close out practice with me where we began, in the center of our mat. Shoulders over hips, crown of the head over the spine. Again, I fully encourage you to stay in Shavasana if you have the time. The longer you can stay, the better. It was such an honor to guide you through this restorative practice. I hope it brought you the peace that I intended it to, and that you needed in your day. I'll see you again on the mat again soon. If you enjoyed this class, make sure to check out all of my other videos and my YouTube channel, as well as my online yoga library. The links are below in the video description. Thank you so much for supporting me, for being here, for practicing with me, for you. I'll see you on the mat again soon. Namaste.